Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the consequences of Brexit so far. 10 consequences of Brexit over just 6 weeks, compared with the benefits that people were sold in order to vote for this historic, genuinely world-beating act of national self-destruction. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So Brexit was sold as £350 million a week extra for the NHS, and that British businesses would be making an extra £600 million a week collectively. So what's actually happened? Well, let's run them down. The first immediate consequence was that some goods could not be legally sold in the EU, remember our most important market, at all now. We're a third country. We chose to be a third country. I say we. What I mean is the people who voted Conservative in 2019. There are many consequences that are on the people who voted Leave in 2016. This technically isn't one of them. Several in this list are technically not one of them, because they were told that we would remain with full access to the single market. Had this promise been kept, which it could have been, then for example, the fishing industry wouldn't have had a problem selling its catch in the EU. Now, this one is on the people who voted Conservative in 2019, because that was the first time when people actually got a vote, when they were specifically voting for leaving the single market. No lies there. Actually, well, there were plenty of lies there, but not on that point. They did make it absolutely clear that a vote for the Conservatives was a vote to leave the single market. So those who voted Conservative voted for this. And for those who voted Conservative, even though were there another referendum they would have voted to remain after all, but they voted Conservative because they thought, well, at least leaving and getting the whole thing done was better than keep stringing it along with maybe being able to remain later on. I wonder what they think of that reasoning behind the vote there. A bit like the excluded, I suppose. 3 million small business owners who have received absolutely no financial support. Not just not enough, none at all, not a penny during the entire coronavirus emergency. And this is a demographic where a majority, by no means all, but a majority of them will have voted Conservative. I wonder what they're thinking about this now. The second consequence was a shortage of some fresh fruit and vegetables. Like all shortages, more pronounced in Northern Ireland, of course, where the supply chain was badly affected on a whole range of issues. But even I saw this impact, and it was obvious enough, really. If you have less than half the normal amount of goods passing each way across the border, or if you have delays to those goods passing across, that inevitably will mean shortages. And when it comes to fresh food, of course that will mean shortages, because if it doesn't get here in time, you can't wait a week or two for that, and you can't stockpile it in December, then you are going to see shortages. The third consequence really was customs declarations and checks on some goods passing between Britain and Northern Ireland. So a customs border inside the UK. This also has led to some goods not being allowed to pass from Britain to Northern Ireland at all. So never mind all the talk of sovereignty. How is it a sovereignty gain to come up with a deal that means we're not allowed to trade goods inside our own bloody country? Most of us probably know, for example, of the tractors that weren't allowed to cross the border inside the UK because it had some soil on its tyres. And then there's those plant bulbs that Michael Gove pretends to care about. 4, cars more expensive. This one is absolutely on the Brexit voters, because they were told about this before the referendum. Even if you believed the lies of the Brexit MPs, just like Boris Johnson, this one was forewarned. And sure enough, the price of cars in the UK is already going up. Ford has already raised the price on some of their models. Others will inevitably follow suit, all related to the extra costs of dealing with rules of origin. 5, we're not really allowed to travel into the EU with a picnic. Another early on bit of humiliation was people having their ham and cheese sandwiches confiscated at the Dutch border. In fact, there are all sorts of travel restrictions in place now, which may not be that prominent due to our plague island status and much of the world not really allowing travellers from the UK anyway. But when we get to the point where international travel starts to increase much more to what would be previously normal levels, we're going to find out, or a lot of people that do that traveling are going to find out just how much extra hassle it's going to be. Oh, and you may struggle to take your pet with you, and your mobile phone bills might go up a bit if you travel overseas as well. They'll also have to get used to the fact that different countries have different rules when it comes to this sort of thing. So for some countries, it may be easier than others, and for arranging visas and things like that. 6, we have a massive amount of Brexit red tape. Brexiteers tried to tell us that the EU was the source of massive amounts of bureaucracy, and that leaving the EU would consign it all to the dustbin of history. Leave the EU so we can have less bureaucracy, less paperwork, less red tape, and that will help our businesses. I mean, I tried asking people what bureaucracy they ever thought they'd had to engage in as a result of being in the EU. Oddly silent, even people who had businesses. Well, I mean, now we know the lies in this. Last year, Michael Gove said that the government were hiring 50,000 new customs officials. That's 50,000 new bureaucrats just to deal with the extra bureaucracy that Brexit brings. Actually, that's not quite true, is it? It isn't to deal with all the extra bureaucracy that Brexit brings, just to deal with the extra bureaucracy that immigration and customs have to deal with. The extra bureaucracy that businesses are faced with, or even just you or I, if we want to send a parcel to Auntie Margaret in Spain, for example, that has to be completed at our time and expense. Government aren't really doing a lot for that. Both people and businesses are realising the EU actually made things easier and did away with paperwork. Brexit has not banished red tape, it has introduced it where either little or none at all existed. When we have hired these 50,000 new bureaucrats, the Financial Times pointed out last year that we will have more bureaucrats in the EU just for dealing with trade with the EU, just for that, not all the rest of the bureaucrats, just that, than the entire EU Commission has for coordinating everything, including trade, across all 27 nations of the EU. It's absolutely mind-blowing, that, isn't it? Absolutely mind-blowing. How is it possible that we, just as one country, will need more bureaucrats just to deal with trade with the EU than the whole EU Commission needs to deal with trade across the entire world, as well as deal with all the other issues that the EU Commission deals with across 27 member states? 7. Haulage becomes more difficult and more expensive, in some cases non-existent. Some logistics companies have had to massively increase their prices, meaning that the goods in theory can still be traded, but they become too expensive to be worthwhile. I talked recently about the fact that the low-calorie little treats, doggy ice cream we get for our little puglets, is no longer available in the UK. The company's just not shipping it. You can get doggy ice cream imported, but it costs an absolute fortune. It used to cost a few pounds a tub. Now it's like £25 because of course, the cost of transport. And yeah, that's where we are now. Other logistics companies have just abandoned the notion of carrying goods across the Brexit borders altogether. In terms of my personal experience, beyond just treats for doggies, I've experienced mixed responses with buying goods from the EU. Some are no longer available to me, some I just cannot get. One order was cancelled because it wasn't of high enough value. They said if I put in an order for above a certain amount, I think it was like £150 or something, at that point it becomes worthwhile to them, but nothing less than that. And then there's other ones where I can get the stuff, but it just costs a lot more now. 8, it's already taken its toll on our financial services sector. Although much of the Brexit focus has been on goods, our services sector is worth, well, 4 times as much to our economy. And services also represents our positive balance of trade with the EU. We're not a big manufacturing nation anymore, but our service sector is genuinely world-class in many areas. So naturally, of course, the Conservatives prioritised getting a deal that allowed us to carry on that world-class trade in services. Oh wait, no, they didn't. Now the Bank of England fears that the EU is going to get ready to cut off the UK-based financial services from their markets, and various Brexiteers are now champing at the bit to say, oh, what a mistake this would be for the EU to do so. Rather think it's a mistake for them rather than the EU. 9. As well as a customs border between Britain and Northern Ireland, I bet few foresaw that we'd also have another internal border, this time around the county of Kent. No, this wasn't an attempt to stop Nigel Farage travelling around the country, but to prevent damaging headlines of miles of lorry tailbacks bringing the entire county to a standstill. So instead what they did was to make sure that those delays of lorries were stuck elsewhere. And for the ones that did make it into Kent, giant lorry parks spring up everywhere to keep the lorries off the roads. The Conservative and Brexit voting populations of Kent seem to be delighted with what their votes have brought them. Oh wait, actually no, they're pretty furious as it happens. And then 10, if you're a musician, or indeed performer in general, but musicians are getting the main headlines, early on in what might have been a promising career, you are pretty buggered now. The government couldn't be asked to organise easy touring visas, even though the EU offered this as part of the deal. It's not like the EU were demanding something major in return, it was just offered. And no, in an act of pure spite, the government have prevented musicians and other performers from working around the EU. Not an inevitable consequence of Brexit, not something that technically either the Brexit voters or the Conservative voters would have voted for, just an inevitable consequence of implementing a harsh Brexit cult-like mindset. So those are 10 immediate consequences of Brexit. We haven't even reached the first stage of the grace period removals. Remember, Brexit is very much being introduced in stages. More will be coming as each layer of Brexit is revealed. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.